The Jacksons, An American Dream wasn't just a TV movie, it became part of the very story it was telling. This countdown promises 15 revelations that will change the way you see this iconic miniseries forever. And there's one jaw-dropping bonus at the end that almost nobody talks about. So speed up with me because the list starts now. Number 1. A family wrote its own story first. Before a single actor was cast, before a single scene was filmed, this project already had something most biographical dramas never get: the subject's own blessing. The entire production was built on Katherine Jackson's 1990 autobiography, a first-person account written from inside the household that produced the most successful musical act of the century. And Michael Jackson personally read and approved the script before any casting decisions were made. Executive producer Suzanne DePass, a real Motown veteran who had lived through many of these events herself, said the goal was accuracy within the framework of dramatic storytelling, not a strict documentary. Jermaine Jackson also produced alongside Margaret Maldonado, meaning the family wasn't just consulted, they were steering the ship from the inside. Very few biographical productions in television history have ever been built on that level of insider access and approval. This wasn't Hollywood guessing at a family story. It was the family handing over the pen. Compare that to most celebrity biopics, where studios piece together a narrative from tabloid clippings, secondhand interviews, and legal disclaimers designed to keep lawyers happy rather than to keep the truth intact. Here, the primary source material came from inside the house itself, and the most scrutinized man in music personally signed off on how his own childhood would be portrayed to millions of strangers. Number 2. Michael wanted a pretty actress to play his mom. When it came time to cast his own mother, Michael Jackson didn't leave that decision to the producers. He had final approval, and he used it directly. His reasoning was refreshingly simple. He wanted a pretty actress in the role, and he specifically asked for Angela Bassett. Here's the thing. In 1992, Bassett wasn't yet the household name she'd soon become. This was before Malcolm X, before What's Love Got to Do with It, before Waiting to Exhale. She was a respected working actress, but the wider public hadn't caught up to her talent yet. Michael saw it before almost anyone else did. What she delivered was one of the most acclaimed performances of the entire miniseries. Variety specifically called out her work as strong and subtle, praising how she aged the character across 5 decades, from a shy girl falling for a charming steelworker to a matriarch watching her family fracture under global fame. Michael asked for pretty. What he got was a masterclass. It's worth remembering that casting a mother figure convincingly across 5 decades is one of the hardest challenges in biographical filmmaking, and very few actresses that early in their career could have carried that arc with the same believability Bassett brought to it. If you are enjoying this, take 2 seconds and leave a like. Subscribe if you want more videos like this. That support really motivates my work and helps a lot with bringing more content. Number 3. The whole family had veto power over their own faces. This wasn't a project where the family simply handed over their story and stepped back. Every single Jackson sibling had final approval over who played them at every stage of their life. And it wasn't a courtesy, it was baked into the process. Approvals moved through layers. Jermaine and Margaret Maldonado went first, then Joseph and Katherine, then Michael, who personally signed off on all 3 actors who would portray him across different ages. Jermaine took that authority somewhere no one expected. He cast his own real-life son, Jermaine Jackson II, to play him as a teenager. Now check this out. That meant zero suspension of disbelief was needed for that role, because audiences watching the teenage Jermaine on screen were, in the most literal sense possible, watching Jermaine Jackson's own blood. Casting director Jackie Brown had opened a P.O. box in Los Angeles for global video submissions, and hundreds poured in. But she still said if there had been another Michael Jackson walking around, she'd have already known about him. Number 4. One tear sealed the most important role. Wylie Draper wasn't discovered through that worldwide video submission process at all. He came from a single personal referral, a former teacher from Pittsburgh who who recommended him to director Karen Arthur. But here's where it gets interesting. Even before his audition, people were already whispering about his uncanny resemblance to Thriller-era Michael Jackson. When Draper walked into the room to audition in front of Katherine Jackson, who helped oversee casting personally, she started crying immediately, not partway through his reading. The moment he walked in, that reaction essentially locked in his casting before he'd delivered a single line of dialogue. Draper was 23 years old, professionally trained as a dancer, and he had just made the mother of Michael Jackson weep just by existing in the same room as her. Whatever formal steps came after that moment were pure formality. The role had already been decided by a mother's tears. Number 5. The actor who played Michael Best died at 24. The reviews for Wylie Draper's performance were extraordinary. Entertainment Tonight praised how he captured not just Michael's dance moves, but his soft voice, his shy demeanor, and that specific fragile vulnerability that defined Michael's early solo years. But wait, there's more to this story, and it's heartbreaking. Draper died on December 20th, 1993, exactly 1 year after the miniseries premiered. He was 24 years old. The cause was leukemia. His contribution went beyond acting too. As a trained dancer, he worked directly alongside Emmy-winning choreographer Michael Peters, helping actually build the routines rather than just performing them. His family established the Wylie Draper Foundation in his memory in 1994. Decades later, his performance is still considered the gold standard against which every other portrayal of Michael Jackson gets measured by the people who watched it happen live. Number 6. A global talent hunt with no room for error. Casting 15 actors to cover 5 brothers across 3 different life stages. Each was unlike almost anything television had attempted before. The physicality had to be right. The faces had to be right. And for the role of Michael, arguably the most famous entertainer on the planet, there was essentially zero margin for error. Casting director Jackie Brown set up that now famous P.O. box and invited video auditions from literally anywhere in the world. Hundreds of tapes arrived from hopeful actors everywhere. But here's the thing, she still wasn't satisfied, because she believed if another Michael Jackson existed out there, the industry would already know his name. Approval moved through layer after layer of the actual Jackson family before anyone got the part. This wasn't outsourced casting dressed up as authenticity. It was the family making every single call themselves. In an era before digital submissions and viral casting calls, a physical mailbox in Los Angeles became the single funnel through which an entire family's on-screen legacy would be decided, one videotape at a time. Number 7, the child actor who actually sang his own vocals. Most musical biopics take the easy route. Actors lip sync to the original recordings, and the audience never knows the difference. Jason Weaver, who played Michael from ages 9 through 14, didn't always get that safety net. When Jackson 5 recordings existed for a scene, sure, Weaver lip-synced like everyone expected. But when they didn't, one of 3 singers stepped in to cover the vocals, and Weaver was one of them, singing at just 12 years old. His genuine musical talent was actually one of the reasons Michael Jackson wanted him for the role in the first place. It wasn't a fallback plan. It was a quality the family specifically searched for and found in him. Now for the wild part. 2 years later, that same young voice would sing I Just Can't Wait to Be King and Hakuna Matata as young Simba in Disney's The Lion King. The voice Michael Jackson trusted to represent him as a child turned out to be good enough for an entirely different animated legend. Number 8. The most dramatic scene in the whole show never actually happened. One of the most satisfying moments in the entire miniseries is the Jackson 5's Motown audition. The scene where Gordy himself watches nervously, the tension builds, and history gets made right there in the room. None of that is actually true. Gordy wasn't present for that audition at all. The real audition was videotaped and shown to him afterward, not performed live in front of him. The full history is messier too. The Jackson 5's first actual contract wasn't with Motown. It was with Steeltown Records, a smaller label based in their hometown of Gary, Indiana. When Gladys Knight sent Motown a demo tape, Gordy initially rejected it because he was hesitant about signing another child act. It took Bobby Taylor seeing them live and arranging a formal audition before Gordy finally saw the footage and changed his mind. The miniseries chose the cleaner, more dramatic version of events. It's simply not the accurate one. Before we keep going, subscribe if you haven't yet. Drop a comment telling me which movie or show you want me to cover next with strange behind-the-scenes facts. I read every single one. Number 9. A throwaway scene produced an accidental top 5 hit. In one of the miniseries' quietest but most significant moments, Boyz II Men appear on a Gary, Indiana street corner, performing an a cappella version of In the Still of the Night, outside the actual Jackson family home. The scene itself is brief. What happened afterward was not. That recording, made specifically for this production, was released as an actual single. It climbed to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 and hit number 1 in New Zealand. It later got added to a reissue of their album Cooley High Harmony, where an entirely new audience discovered it with no idea it had started life inside a television biopic. Here's the strange part. The song is now almost entirely associated with Boyz II Men alone. The miniseries that actually created it is barely mentioned in the same breath anymore. It's one of the rare cases in music history of a legitimate top 5 hit that essentially escaped and outgrew its own origin story completely. Think about how rare that actually is. A song written for a specific dramatic moment usually stays tied to that moment forever, but this one broke free entirely and built its own separate legacy on the charts. Number 10. The same voice. Actor secretly voiced Michael Jackson twice. When scenes involving adult Michael required singing, the production obviously couldn't use his actual original recordings. That responsibility fell to Kipp Lennon. But here's where it gets interesting. Lennon had already done this exact job once before. 1 year earlier, in 1991, he provided the singing voice for Michael Jackson's guest appearance on The Simpsons, in the episode where a character named Leon Kompowski claims to be Michael Jackson and sings Happy Birthday to Lisa. That appearance stayed uncredited at the time, with the real Michael Jackson voicing the spoken dialogue while Lennon secretly handled every note. By the time Lennon dubbed Wylie Draper's singing in this miniseries, he was already the industry's go-to voice for whenever someone needed to sound exactly like Michael Jackson singing, without actually being him. He occupied that strange, specific niche in 2 of the most culturally significant Jackson-adjacent productions of the early 90s, back-to-back. Number 11. 38 million people stopped what they were doing to watch. The ratings for this miniseries weren't just solid, they were a genuine national event. Part 1 aired November 15th and became the 3rd highest-rated program of its entire broadcast week, pulling a strong 21.1 rating on its own. Part 2, though, was something else entirely. It drew 38.4 million viewers and 22.3 million households, posting a stunning 23.9 rating and a 36 share. That made it the single highest-rated program on all of American television for that entire week, not just among comparable shows, the highest, period. Overall, the miniseries reached 38.3 million households, with a 22.3 rating and a 33 share across its full run. For ABC, this was the kind of broadcast that reminds an entire network what television can accomplish when the right story meets the right audience at exactly the right cultural moment. A family from a small house on Jackson Street in Gary, Indiana, had become appointment viewing for nearly the entire country. To put that number in perspective, very few scripted broadcasts of any kind, before or since, have managed to pull nearly a quarter of American households in front of the same screen on the same night. Number 12. The most famous fire in pop history didn't happen the way you think. The miniseries recreates one of the most talked about moments in Michael Jackson's public life, the 1984 Pepsi commercial shoot, where pyrotechnics set his scalp on fire, an image that stuck in public memory for decades. The broad strokes are accurate. The fire happened, the shoot was real, the injury was real, but the specific details on screen aren't quite right. The miniseries shows Michael rolling down a set of stairs during the accident. That's not what actually occurred. In reality, he walked down the stairs with his scalp already burning before he even realized what was happening, then spun around and shook his head wildly once the pain registered. The same spin that had defined his stage performances for years. just now with his hair on fire. It's a small detail, but for a production personally approved by Michael Jackson himself and based on his own mother's book, it's a curious gap between the dramatized version and what genuinely happened that day. Quick reminder to subscribe if you are enjoying these revelations. And tell me in the comments, do you know any strange fact about this movie that I didn't mention? Let's build the list together. Number 13. The choreographer had already built these exact moves years earlier. The Emmy for Outstanding Choreography went to Michael Peters. A well-earned win for recreating the Jackson 5 and early solo Michael's signature moves across 5 decades of performance history, seamlessly enough that longtime fans wouldn't notice the seams. But Peters wasn't approaching this as an outside observer studying old footage. He'd already done this exact job for Michael Jackson in real life. Peters choreographed Thriller, arguably the single most influential music video ever made. He also choreographed Beat It, and even appeared in that video himself as one of the 2 white-suited gang leaders in the knife fight sequence. He had worked directly with Michael at the absolute height of his creative powers. In the very same creative space these dance sequences were originally born in. When Peters built these routines for the miniseries, he wasn't reconstructing something secondhand. He was revisiting material he'd personally helped invent. He reteamed with Angela Bassett the following year on the Tina Turner biopic What's Love Got to Do with It, before passing away in 1994 at just 46 years old. His work on this miniseries wasn't a side project tacked onto a legendary career. It was one of the final chapters of a body of work that permanently reshaped how music and movement live together on screen. Number 14. After Michael's death, one network couldn't stop airing this. When Michael Jackson passed away on June 25, 2009, television networks scrambled for anything Jackson related to broadcast, and VH1 turned straight to this miniseries. They aired it constantly for the remainder of that year, and then they simply kept going. It had already been a fixture in VH1's rotation well before Michael's passing, but the scale after 2009 was something completely different in kind. It eventually became the network's single most aired and most beloved television film of any genre, not just their most aired Jackson content, their most aired film period. The production that drew 38 million viewers back in 1992 found a second life, and then a third one after that. This new wave of broadcasts introduced the story to viewers who hadn't even been born during its original airing, an entire generation meeting Michael Jackson as a legend rather than a living contemporary. It has since aired on TV One, BET, and Centric 2, still circulating decades later. Very few made-for-television movies from the early 90s can claim that kind of ongoing shelf life, let alone one that keeps finding brand new audiences 3 decades after it first went to air. Almost at the end, and the best is still coming. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next, and drop your city or country in the comments. I want to see how far this video is reaching. Number 15. A future Oscar nominee made his film debut here. Somewhere in the back half of this miniseries, a young actor playing the adult version of Jackie Jackson, the eldest Jackson brother, delivers his lines in what was, at the time, his very first professional film or television role of any kind. That actor was Terrence Howard. Years later, Howard would earn an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor for Hustle and Flow in 2005, one of only a small handful of performers ever nominated for a debut leading role. He'd go on to anchor Fox's hit drama Empire, playing music mogul Lucius Lyon across 6 full seasons, becoming one of the most recognizable dramatic actors of his entire generation. But back in 1992, he was simply an unknown playing Jackie Jackson in a television miniseries about a family from Gary, Indiana. This production also gave early screen time to Bumper Robinson, who played the younger version of Jackie and went on to a long career across film, television, and voice work. This wasn't just a landmark broadcast. It was a genuine launching pad for careers nobody saw coming yet, the role he lived before he ever played it. The story of how Wylie Draper landed the role of Michael Jackson is unusual enough on its own. Recommended by a former teacher, not discovered through the open submission process, making Katherine Jackson cry the instant he walked through the door. But here's a layer almost nobody talks about. Before Draper ever auditioned to play Michael Jackson on screen, he had already worked for Michael Jackson in real life. He was a professional dancer who had genuinely been on Michael's actual payroll, part of that world long before he was ever asked to recreate it for cameras. So when he stepped into the role, he wasn't just bringing physical resemblance and raw dancing talent with him. He was bringing insider knowledge nobody else auditioning could possibly have had. He'd been in those rooms. He'd absorbed that exact movement and energy that made Michael Jackson unlike anyone else who ever stepped on a stage. He wasn't studying a subject from the outside looking in. He was recreating an experience he had genuinely lived through himself, right alongside choreographer Michael Peters, helping shape routines rather than simply following them. He was 23 years old. He had made Katherine Jackson weep in an audition room. He had already danced for the man he was about to portray, and 1 year after this miniseries aired, he was gone. Of everything on this list, that combination is the one that lingers the longest: a young dancer who lived inside Michael Jackson's actual world before he was ever asked to recreate it, and who left that world behind far too soon to see how deeply his performance would end up shaping the way an entire family's story got remembered. And those were 15 strange facts about the Jacksons, an American dream. This miniseries mattered more than most people give it credit for. A family taking control of their own narrative decades before that became common, and launching careers nobody could have predicted at the time. It also left behind a strange trail of consequences nobody expected going in. A top 5 hit, an Oscar nominee's first credit, and a young dancer whose performance still hasn't been topped. If you made it this far, leave a like, subscribe, and comment which fact surprised you the most. And don't forget to suggest another movie or show that deserves a list of strange facts like this one. See you in the next video.